ranking all domain expansions, and I'll give you an explanation of each one that we talk about. Now, my ranking, it ain't gonna be based off how strong it is, because let's be honest, we all know what the ranking for all of them would be in terms of power. So I wanted to do them just in terms of my favorites. So I go off creativity, the domain itself, the power, all of that. So we got 14 of these things to rank, so let's get into it. At last, I got the Smallpox Deity, number 14. I really like the graveyard vibe and the activation of how it works. I always thought it was really cool. When Meme and Wee go over there and they try to fight it, it automatically puts them in a coffin, at least one of them, whoever's the primary target. And he counts to 3, kind of like a rock, paper, scissors countdown. 3, 2, 1, and then the person's dead within the coffin. Like, just died from the smallpox disease that he puts into the domain. Honestly, I feel like this would have been really cool with a character that is an actual character, because the Smallpox Deity, what doesn't help its case with this being like a top tier domain is the fact that it's not an actual character. There's no characterization to it, other than the fact that, of course, if you know the history of the smallpox disease, it led to a lot of deaths in the world. So I get that part of it, but other than the cool activation and then like the scenery of it, I just kind of wish that it was on another character. Plus the panels of how it was used into the countdown and the different fonts was really dope. So I'm gonna have it last, but yeah. 13 is Jogo's Coffin of the Iron Mountain, mainly because I fucks with Jogo more than the Smallpox Deity, but his rank's pretty slow just because of the fact that we didn't really get to see what his does. I mean, obviously we got an idea because he's an earth spirit, and he uses fire that he either burns his target alive within the Coffin of the Iron Mountain, or he also shown to use the earth parts of the volcano and tries to attack the opponent. But considering he only did this once and it was against Gojo, who completely rendered it useless, didn't really help the brother's case in showing what he could do. Other than that, he's just not much to it. Number 12, I got Megumi Fujiguro's Chimera Shadow Garden. What ranked this lower is because we never got to see the full potential of it. It was stuck in the incomplete form of the domain. So my boy had to be kind of low. Because I feel like if he was, fully potential realized and actually got it done, it probably would have been top 5. But working with what we got, we only seen it about twice. So unfortunately, it really couldn't rank that high. The domain pretty much just enhances the shadows that he does have, and he can bring them out from the pool of shadows. And he uses it pretty cool. I think the best one is obviously with Reggie. The first time he used it, he used a bunch of new way. I think a snake at one point, frogs to take care of the Sukuna finger bearer. It was a really dope moment. And it fits the character of Megumi because relatively he is a peaceful character, but there's a lot of rage underneath or just selfishness that was supposed to be let out at some point. And he really does it a lot during his domain because his whole demeanor kind of changes. He locks in a lot more. He's more focused on his target, and he comes off as even more of a threat because of what he could do, especially when he throws out like a max elephant to just throw on top of you, or just outsmarting you in general, using the domain almost like a counter in itself. It's really dope. I think the full potential of this, to me personally, I would have really liked that theory. I like the theory of the Gasha Dokuro being in the background of the Chimera Shadow Garden. Me personally, if I would have made it a little bit more eccentric, actually do something with that garden part with the Chimera. I think it would have been dope if like the terrain would have changed depending on which shadow he chose for the split second and kind of fused them more often. I don't know. One of the things I wish Gege really was able to do before he had to pack it up. For number 11, Dagon's Horizon of the Scaptivating Conda. Now I got a little bit of a bias with this one, but just because I freaking love Dagon's domain. I loved everything about the Cthulhu inspiration behind it. Of course, with the water being incorporated in his moveset, that's nothing I'm biased towards. For some reason, I love water build. But his being a beach was kind of something I wish was messed with a little bit. I always felt that he would have like a beach for characters that he interacted with, that he was friends with. Obviously, Jogo, Mahito, Hanami, etc. It would conclude as a beach, but I really would have liked it, and I kind of wish the anime kind of took this direction too, was that when he going up against an actual enemy, it would kind of change a little bit. Maybe make it like a stormy tsunami type of environment, rather than it being a sunshine beach the entire time. Especially considering he could launch sea monsters and sea creatures at you like piranhas, and they're invisible so you can't see them. I feel like if it was a stormy beachfront, it would have really enhanced it. And I appreciate the deadliness of it, especially the way that it attacked Nabito and Nanami. I mean, they nearly died in that thing, especially when Nanami was getting bitten and almost eaten alive by those. Really fire. For number 10, I got Yorozu's Threefold Affliction. Only thing here is the fact that it's really strong and it reminds me of Vanilla Ice, so I'm kind of giving it a little bit of a bump with that because it doesn't really have like a real design to it. All it has is the characters are just floating in their own space, and it's a bunch of uteruses just hanging around. So that's one of the things that kind of just takes it down, but I do love the effect of it. And the fact that Yorozu did this in their base form and not that ugly ass bug form. So that's what gives it a bonus. And honestly, I kind of would have liked to see this before Sukuna, even though realistically probably shouldn't have, because Yorozu isn't that important once it's revealed who she is. But it kind of would have been cool to see this used on like another sorcerer in the kind of games, and then it fails against Sukuna. At least that's how I feel about it. Number 9 is Naoya Zenin's domain expansion, Time Cell Moon Palace. First of all, the name is fire. Up until now, this is the best name out of anything of the domain. And this one is also perfect with how it enhances his curse technique. Obviously, projection sorcery is just speeding up time frames within a battle. He just makes the motion beforehand and then executes it. This one is really cool because he puts the motions like in their brain or however they view it. And if they don't go with the motion that he already has preset, then they take damage internally. Although they'll never be able to do it because Naoya is so fast and it's hard to read those movements. And it kind of fills you with information similar to another domain that's going to be shown in the later part of this video that you're not really prepared for. Now, why the path of it leads to Naoya sitting behind a uterus, I don't know what it was with Gege at this time in uteruses. I don't know what he was going on with. But regardless, this was an amazing domain. I'm glad Naoya got one, especially with all the buffs he was getting. It was really surprising seeing him get one. Even the way he activated, like he hatched out of the egg and he launched it was... Number 8, I got Kenjaku with the womb Profusion. Now, he's the first one that doesn't have a barrier with his domain because we never see him put a barrier around it. Now, the way his works is, I mean, there's no real explanation. We can just assume it's kind of similar to Uzumaki, where he just combines all of the absorbed curse spheres that he's taken over time and he kind of just puts it like a big explosion, which is kind of what it feels like. It's like an earthquake explosion because it rattles through the simple domain from the ground and then hits Yuki. I just love like the design of it because it looks like a tree of dead souls. It's kind of the vibe it gives off, like all the souls and the cursed spirits he's absorbed throughout the years that he's been living, and well, ever since he took over Geto's body. And then the bodies that are like cross-arm locked, wrapped around the top of the tree, kind of forming together like a ring. It gives off like a horror vibe. And then the spirits at the bottom, something about it just really resonates with like the vibe that kind of matches Kenjaku, where it doesn't explain to you, but the design is enough to just tell you exactly what it's about. Number 7, I got his son, Yuji Itadori. Now, Yuji doesn't have a name for his domain, and even though it's not technically explained what Yuji's domain is, it's kind of clear what it does, because based off what Yuji's version of Shrine is, it pretty much just kind of rips apart the target just kind of cleanly. More so like separating things instead of just ripping them to shreds compared to Sukuna. But I just like the whole chapter of Yuji walking through Sendai, going through his memories of what he was as a child to Sukuna, and just the whole talk, and then eventually like the build up and suspense of what is Yuji leading to. Because even then it starts at a train station, which is of course all about destination. So what is Yuji's destination once he finishes his domain? He gets to the end of it and it just feels like Yuji's reached the pinnacle. He's reached the pinnacle with the domain expansion, and this is the most threatening he's ever been. He's even at Sukuna shook because Sukuna knows that Yuji can kill him right here if he could. Even down to the meaning of it, where the meaning of Yuji's hand sign is that he's a monk that was revered in Buddhism, and then eventually he was like a vessel or earth vessel for something greater. Hopefully that's correct, because I was looking online to really find out and Googling and did some research on it. So hopefully that's the accurate depiction of what the sign is, but because it really does fit Yuji and what his representation in the Jujutsu world is. All it was missing was a name, but I've seen people say Malevolent Shrine. I'm all for that one. Higuruma's Deadly Sentencing is number 2. I love not only the domains, I really got a couple more of those before the series ended. Especially since these domains, I mean, they're pretty much attached to the character themselves. They feel like a part of them. And with Higuruma being a lawyer, of course, he had a trial in court setting as his domain with no violence being able to take place. So everything is going to have to be vocal. You have to use your words to combat this domain. And if you are guilty, which most of the time you will be, Higuruma gets to take away your curse energy or your curse technique depending on what you have or what you don't have. And if you get the death penalty, he ends up getting the Executioner Sword, which is a one-shot, one-kill sword. He gets to be the judge, jury, and the executioner. And depending on the type of character that he's going to trial against, it could end up being a play on the consciousness of that character. With Yuji, of course, you know, Yuji's an innocent kid. He just kind of didn't want to admit to it, but he ended up having to, realizing what he did in Shibuya, due to him losing control, which ended up a bunch of people dying. Now, if he did this against another character, it probably wouldn't mean shit. Also, Judge Man, his Shikigami that's behind him, which doesn't do anything but tell him what the result is. You know, at least in terms of power, it doesn't add anything, but in aesthetic, it's a really nice addition. And with his domain, Higuruma went from a lawyer that was just at the mercy of the Japan justice system to now he's the one that decides people's fate. Number 5, we got Yuta Okotsu's Authentic Mutual Profusion. I mean, this is straight up just Emius from Fate Unlimited Blade Works, and that's part of the reason why I really rocks with it. We always kind of waited for you to have his domain, and when it was released, or even when we theorized what it could be, there was no real basis on what we think it could have possibly looked like. Because of the fact that he has a copy ability, it's like, okay, how do you envision copying in a verse like this? And what we ended up getting was very much perfect for Yuta because it encapsulates everything with him. The marital ribbons wrapped around the pillars representing his love for Rika, and then of course the swords at the bottom which carry the curse techniques that he's copied from other people, which each one being a different one that he's learned or picked up. And even in the way he uses it, it just comes off really cool with the way that he just picks up a sword and then he gets Oral Sky ability. And then even with the binding vow attached to it, where he can pick which binding vow to put on the domain. This one he picked for Angels, which is literally the perfect one you can have for a domain. And out of all the domains that have to be animated in season 3 and even in season 4 later down the road, this is the main one. I cannot wait to see how they do. And it's one of the few domains where he can actually work with another person, something that has been almost not shunned upon, but in most cases with domain expansions, you can't have somebody else help you alongside because they will get affected by it. It was teased in the triple domain against Ryu and Aurora. I would have actually really liked to see that with him doing a 2v1. Would he have been able to keep up even with Rika? Because I don't know, having 2 people in your domain, especially with this one, I don't know how effective it would have been. But it definitely did the job of overwhelming Sukuna to almost beating him. Number 4, the menace himself, Mahito. First of all, I love Mahito. And his domain was number 1 for me until, other shit just happened. But Self-Embodiment of Perfection is the enhanced mega version of Idol Transfiguration. One touch and it's over, because it's gonna turn you into a Pokemon or a blob or whatever he wants to do with it. I like the hands, because hands is like a real big aspect of Mahito because it has to touch you. And I like the Geki kind of took that and just made like a whole smorgasbord of hands, almost like a portrait, being the background of Mahito's domain. And in the anime, it actually was purple, which I like too, because that goes with Mahito's color aesthetic as well. My favorite one is more likely the one that he used against Mechamaron, because that fight leading up to it, it just felt like Mahito's domain expansion was like the Grim Reaper. It's like once it took place, you were like, damn, it's really over. And I like that feeling because that's probably the first domain that gave me that feeling of, wow, it's actually over, because he used it and he's know he's gonna get out of it. Even when he thought he did, he was still hit and it was game over. Number 3, I got my boy Kenji Hakari. Idle, Death, Gamble. Now, I'm not going to go over the rules because, I mean, this domain over time should be relatively simple for everybody. He puts you in a big-ass pachinko machine, and he's just going to play slot machine until he can match all 3. And once he gets jackpot, the music hits, and basically he just turns into a crackhead ready to beat your ass because he gets so high off of the infinite curse energy that he gets. And with the automatic reverse curse technique that he gets due to the infinite amount of curse energy, the man just heals himself automatically. So he doesn't even have to worry about incoming damage. Even when he can get decapitated or his head blown off, he does not worry about it. He kind of just stops for a second, then heals, and game is back to going. We back to dance. And Hakari does make this technique just a spectacle in and of itself. And I kind of lied, because this is the domain, other than Yuta's, that I cannot wait to see how they animate it. And I want to see people's reactions to it, especially on YouTube, because I know it is going to go viral and crazy. I'm interested to see the song that is in the manga be actually sang and done. And in his fight with Kashimo, you see how Hakari goes from like a grade 1, maybe I'll let you get away with grade 2, level sorcerer to special grade immediately. Also, his mindset is just special grade as well, which is also what makes the ability work in the first place. And even when that 4 minutes and 11 seconds goes up, he could just launch it again and he could put you in a loop. So either learn how to dance with Hakari or you're gonna be dead meat by the end of it. At number 2, Gojo Satoru's Infinite Void. If you don't know what it is by now, first of all, wherever you've been, it stuns anybody because it fills them with an infinite loop of information and they're just stuck. They're frozen like a vegetable, rendering him to do basically whatever he wants with you. And for as simple as this is just really dope for Gojo. I always like this for Gojo because it kind of just fit, because he has infinite, which kind of bases off math and science, and then his domain, the way it looks from the inside, is like a spatial render against the body. I will say my favorite time he used it is probably the first one in Shibuya, when he stops the time and he's moving at an insane speed, eliminating all of the transfigured humans just to get at Mahito and the other special grade sorcerers. Fortunately, it didn't work in terms of how it looked as a panel in the moment and in the anime. Love that one. Second one is definitely the one that he finally pulls off against Sukuna, where he pierces his heart and tries to rip out his heart and stop the whole fight. I don't think I would count the one where Yuji uses it, because I don't know, it has to be Gojo in order for it to really cook. But number one is pretty obvious. The originator, the one who showed us the first domain expansion in the series, Ryoma Sukuna, Malevolent Shrine. Arguably the simplest domain in the series, which is just he rips people to shreds. Once you see that shrine, he's cleaving and dismantling everything in his path. This thing looked insane in the anime. I think that's what really kicked it off for me, especially in season 2 as my favorite. The one he uses against Maaraga I love, just because it's like a messy, violent panel against him of blood and all the cuts. And in the anime, it does look kind of, to me, over time, I've not liked it as much, especially with the Blu-ray coming out. That did make it better, but originally I was kind of indifferent about it. I also really like the one that he used in Shinjuku, where it wasn't fully complete, but he still pulled out that crazy looking statue or creature that was behind him, almost like a skull, and created a Malevolent Shrine tornado. That one was also really dope as well. So Kuna's is just, Kuna uses it often in all of his big fights. The hand sign is also great because it's the symbol of God of Death. Let me know if I am incorrect on that as well, but more content like this. Comment down below your favorite domain expansion, your favorite or your top 3 for this one. I'll see you next time.
Yeah.